Have you noticed something strange happening since you started waking up? People who used to like you suddenly seem uncomfortable around you. Friends you've had for years are pulling away. Family members are making odd comments about how you've changed. Colleagues who were once friendly now seem guarded or even hostile. And the confusing part? You haven't done anything to them. You haven't criticized their choices. You haven't preached about your spiritual journey. You haven't acted superior or holier than thou. You're just being yourself, your authentic self. And somehow, that's enough to set people off. If this is happening to you, I need you to understand something crucial. You're not imagining it, you're not being paranoid, and you're definitely not doing anything wrong. What you're experiencing is one of the most predictable and least discussed consequences of spiritual awakening. Carl Jung saw this pattern over and over in his work with people who were individuating, and he understood exactly why it happens. Your consciousness has become a mirror, and that mirror is showing people things about themselves they desperately don't want to see. The irritation they feel isn't about you at all. It's about them. It's about their own resistance to consciousness, their own fear of change, their own investment in staying asleep. Your very existence has become an uncomfortable reminder that another way of being is possible, and their egos hate you for it. Let me tell you exactly what's happening and why. Because once you understand this dynamic, you'll stop taking these reactions personally. You'll see them for what they really are. Projections, defenses, and desperate attempts to maintain unconsciousness in the face of your awakening. Before we explore the specific ways people's egos will react to your awakening, check out our new guide, True Self-Discovery, with 24 practical reflection exercises designed to help you find your way within. Click below to get True Self-Discovery. Now, let me explain what's actually happening when your presence irritates others. It's not about anything you're saying or doing. It's about what you're not doing anymore. You're not playing the unconscious games that held your relationships together. You're not pretending anymore. You're not wearing the masks that made you acceptable. When someone is living from their ego, their entire sense of identity depends on maintaining certain illusions about themselves and the world. They need to believe they're good people. They need to believe their choices are justified. They need to believe the life they're living is the right life. Their ego is constantly working to maintain these beliefs, to defend against anything that might challenge them. And then you show up. You who have started questioning everything. You who have faced your shadow and admitted your darkness. You who have stopped pretending to be someone you're not. You who have chosen authenticity over acceptance. Your very existence challenges their illusions. Not because you're judging them. You're probably more accepting than you've ever been. Not because you're telling them they're wrong. You've likely stopped trying to change anyone. But simply because you're living proof that another way is possible. That people can question the scripts they've been given, that consciousness is available to those willing to pursue it. That authenticity is possible, even if it costs you everything. And this living proof is what their ego cannot tolerate. Jung said, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people." But here's what he also knew. When you know your own darkness, when you've owned your shadow, you stop participating in the collective denial that most people depend on. And that non-participation feels like an attack to those still invested in the denial. You're not attacking them. You're just not pretending anymore. But to the ego, there's no difference. Your refusal to play along feels like a judgment. Your authenticity feels like an accusation. Your consciousness feels like a threat. Here's what Jung understood about why awakened people irritate others. You become a mirror. And most people hate what they see when they look in the mirror. Not the physical mirror, the psychological one. The mirror that reflects back all the parts of themselves they've been avoiding. When you've done the inner work, when you've faced your shadow and integrated your unconscious, you develop a certain quality of presence. You're not performing anymore. You're not maintaining a false persona. You're not hiding behind social masks. You're just being real. And that realness reflects back to others, their own lack of realness. Your authenticity highlights their inauthenticity. Your consciousness reveals their unconsciousness. Your courage to be yourself reminds them of their cowardice in hiding who they are. They don't consciously think these thoughts. They don't sit there analyzing why you bother them. It's all unconscious. All they know is that being around you makes them uncomfortable. Something about you triggers something in them, and they don't like it. Jung called this projection. When people can't face something in themselves, they project it outward. They see it in others. They attack it in others. They try to destroy it in others. Because if they can eliminate it externally, they don't have to face it internally. So, when an unconscious person encounters your consciousness, they unconsciously project all their discomfort with their own unconsciousness onto you. You become the problem. You're too serious. You're too intense. You think you're better than everyone else. You've changed. You're not fun anymore. None of these accusations are about you. They're all about them. They're about their discomfort with seeing themselves reflected in the mirror of your presence. They're about their resistance to their own awakening. They're about their fear of becoming conscious. Let's go deeper into why this happens. Most people construct their identity around external things, their job, their relationships, their possessions, their beliefs, their social status. They define themselves by these external markers. I am a successful person. I am a good parent. I am a logical person. I am someone who has it all together. These identities are all ego constructs. They're stories the ego tells to maintain a sense of stability and coherence. And the ego will defend these stories ferociously because without them, it doesn't know who it is. When you awaken, you stop identifying with these external markers. You stop defining yourself by your job or your relationships or your beliefs. You recognize these as temporary, changeable aspects of your experience, not as who you fundamentally are. You discover a deeper identity, what Jung called the self, that exists beneath all these external identifications. And this threatens people, because if you can let go of these identifications, it means they could too. It means their carefully constructed identity might also be just a story. It means everything they've built their sense of self upon might be illusory. And that's terrifying to the ego. So they react, they get defensive, they criticize you, they distance themselves from you, not because you've done anything to them, but because your very existence challenges the foundation of their identity. You're a living reminder that the ego's constructions are not absolute, that another way of being is possible, that consciousness is an option, and their ego will do anything to protect itself from that realization. Let me walk you through the 5 specific ways people's egos will react to your awakening. Understanding these patterns will help you navigate them with clarity and compassion instead of confusion and hurt. First, they will demand explanations. When you stop defending yourself, when you stop justifying your choices, when you simply live your life without constantly explaining yourself, something strange happens. People get upset. They demand explanations. They want you to prove that you have a good reason for being the way you are. The ego loves to judge. It loves to evaluate, to measure, to determine whether someone else's choices meet its approval. And when you refuse to play this game, when you don't offer your life up for inspection, the ego feels robbed. You used to explain everything. You used to seek approval. You used to make sure everyone understood your choices. But now you just are. You make choices based on your inner knowing, and you don't feel compelled to justify them to anyone. And this drives people crazy. Why did you quit that job? Why aren't you dating? Why did you stop going to those events? They want answers. They want you to prove that your choices make sense according to their framework. But here's what you've realized. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your existence. You don't need permission to be. You don't have to justify your peace, your choices, your way of moving through the world. And when you live from this place, people will accuse you of being secretive, distant, or arrogant. They'll say you think you're too good to explain yourself, but you're not being arrogant. You're simply no longer seeking external validation for internal decisions. Second, they will test you. This is a fascinating one. When people sense that you've found some kind of peace or clarity they haven't found, they often can't resist testing it. It's almost like they're trying to prove to themselves that you're faking it. They poke, they prod, they say things designed to get a reaction. They bring up topics they know used to trigger you. They create situations designed to push your buttons. Why? Because if they can get you to break, to lose your composure, to react the way you used to, then they can dismiss your transformation. See, you're not really at peace. You're just pretending. You're the same person you always were, just with a new act. You might find a family member bringing up that old argument that always got you heated, a friend mentioning that ex who used to upset you, a colleague making subtle digs about choices you've made, all designed unconsciously to test whether your peace is real. And here's the paradox. If you react, their ego wins. It gets to dismiss you. But if you don't react, their ego gets even more uncomfortable because now it has to face the possibility that your transformation is real. So what do? You let them test. Not because you're trying to prove anything, but because you genuinely aren't bothered anymore. You've done the inner work. You've faced your triggers. You've integrated your shadow. Their tests don't land the way they used to because there's nothing there to trigger anymore. And your calm response to their provocations becomes another mirror showing them what consciousness looks like, which, of course, irritates their ego even more. Third, they will gossip and create stories. When you stop participating in the constant drama of social life, when you stop gossiping, stop complaining, stop playing the games of alliance and betrayal, you become the subject of gossip yourself. People will create stories about you. They'll speculate about what's really going on with you. They'll diagnose you, analyze you, pick apart your choices. They think they're so enlightened. They're going through some kind of crisis. They've become so strange. They're not the person we used to know. Why does this happen? Because the ego needs to make sense of things. When someone steps outside the usual patterns, the ego in others becomes uncomfortable. It needs to categorize, to label, to put you in a box it can understand. And if it can't find a box that fits, it will create one. Usually a box that makes you seem problematic in some way. Because if you're the problem, then they don't have to question themselves. You might hear through others that people are saying you've become weird, or that you're going through a phase, or that you've gotten too deep into spirituality, or that you're not fun anymore. The specific stories will vary, but they all serve the same purpose: to explain away your transformation in a way that protects their worldview. And here's what you need to understand. You cannot control this. You cannot stop people from talking about you. You cannot correct every misunderstanding or defend yourself against every story. The awakened response is to let them talk. Let them create their narratives. Let them gossip and speculate, because their stories have nothing to do with you. Their stories are about their own discomfort, their own fear of change, their own resistance to consciousness. What others think of you is none of your business. You are not the character in their story. You are simply you, walking your path, being present, living authentically. And if you're recognizing this dynamic in your own life, if you're experiencing the isolation that comes with consciousness, check out our new guide, True Self-Discovery, with 24 practical reflection exercises designed to help you find your way within. Click below to get True Self-Discovery. Fourth, they will try to pull you back. This one can be particularly painful because it often comes from people you love, family members, old friends, people who knew you before you woke up. They remember the old you, the you who played the games, who got upset about the same things they got upset about, who participated in all the familiar dramas. And now you've changed. You don't react the same way. You don't get pulled into the same arguments. You don't play your old role in the family dynamic or social group. And this makes them uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. So they try to pull you back. They'll bring up old memories, trying to remind you of who you used to be. They'll invite you into old patterns of relating. They'll create situations where you're expected to play your old part. And when you don't, they'll express hurt, confusion, or frustration. You used to care about these things. Remember when you were fun? You've become so serious. I miss the old you. These statements aren't really about you. They're about their discomfort with your evolution. Because here's what they're not saying. Your growth reminds me that I could grow too, and I'm not ready for that. Your authenticity makes me uncomfortable with my own mask. Your freedom highlights my own imprisonment. The truth is, your transformation suggests that transformation is possible. And that's threatening to people who have organized their entire life around staying the same. If you can change, it means they could change too. And that possibility terrifies the ego. So they try to pull you back into the old patterns, back into the old you, back into the comfortable dynamics where everyone plays their expected role. Because if they can get you to go back, they can continue avoiding their own awakening. But you can't go back. Even if you wanted to, you can't. Once you've seen through the illusion, once you've tasted consciousness, the old ways of being feel like costumes that no longer fit. You can love these people. You can be kind to them. You can spend time with them. But you cannot pretend to be someone you're not anymore just to make them comfortable. And when you hold that boundary, when you refuse to shrink back into your old role, they will feel it as rejection, even though it's simply you honoring your own growth. Fifth, they will feel uncomfortable in your presence. This is perhaps the most subtle and the most powerful reaction. When you've awakened, when you're no longer identified with the ego and all its games, your very presence becomes uncomfortable for those who are still deeply asleep. It's not that you're doing anything wrong. You might be more present, more genuinely interested in them, more compassionate than you've ever been. But something about your energy, your way of being, makes them squirm. Why? Because consciousness is contagious. When you're present, when you're not caught up in the constant chatter of the mind, when you're simply being, it creates a space of stillness, a space of awareness. And in that space, other people's ego chatter becomes suddenly very loud to them. They become aware, even if just slightly, of the noise in their own heads. They become aware of their own anxiety, their own restlessness, their own constant need to be somewhere else, doing something else, being someone else. Your peace mirrors their chaos. Your stillness reflects their agitation. And instead of using this as an opportunity to question their own way of being, the ego's first instinct is to blame you for making them uncomfortable. It's your fault they feel this way. You're too quiet. You're too calm. You're too intense. Something must be wrong with you if you're not as anxious and busy and worried as they are. You might notice people don't want to sit with you in silence. They fill every gap with chatter. They ask you what you're thinking, what's wrong, why you're so quiet. They interpret your presence as judgment when it's simply presence. And here's the beautiful paradox. The very thing that makes them uncomfortable, your awakened presence, is exactly what they need. Your stillness invites them to be still. Your peace offers them the possibility of peace. Your freedom shows them that freedom is possible. But the ego resists this invitation with everything it has, because accepting it means death to the ego. It means letting go of all the games, all the stories, all the desperate attempts to prove its existence. So, what do you do with all of this? How do you navigate a world where your consciousness irritates people? How do you stay true to yourself while still maintaining relationships and functioning in society? First, understand that these reactions are not about you. They're about the other person's relationship with their own ego. When you awaken, you become a mirror, and what people see in that mirror is not you. It's themselves. They see their own fears, their own resistance, their own attachment to the game they're playing. Second, respond with compassion. Because you remember what it was like to be asleep, you remember the constant anxiety, the need to defend yourself, the exhausting game of trying to be somebody. You remember how uncomfortable it was to be around anyone who seemed to have found something you were desperately seeking. Third, don't dim your light to make others comfortable. You might be tempted out of kindness to go back to playing some of the old games, to pretend you're still asleep just to fit in. But this doesn't serve anyone. Your light, your awakened presence, is a gift to the world, even when it makes people uncomfortable, especially when it makes people uncomfortable. Fourth, trust the process. You understand that awakening is not something you can give to anyone else. They have to find it themselves. Your job is not to wake anyone up. Your job is simply to be awake yourself. And in being awake, you offer a possibility. You show that another way is available. And fifth, keep your sense of humor about the whole thing. Because really, isn't it rather funny? The great cosmic joke of it all. Here we are, consciousness pretending to be separate individuals, egos fighting with other egos. All of us forgetting that we're the same thing looking at itself through different eyes. When you see this, when you really get the joke, you can't help but laugh. Not at others, but with them. Because we're all in this ridiculous play together. Here's something Jung understood that might surprise you. The fact that your consciousness irritates others is actually a gift. Not a comfortable gift, but a gift nonetheless. It's a gift because it shows you who people really are. When your awakening triggers someone's ego, you get to see beneath their mask. You get to see their shadow, their fears, their resistance to growth. And this information is valuable. It tells you who is capable of meeting you authentically and who isn't. It shows you which relationships have the potential for depth and which are based purely on unconscious agreement. It's also a gift because it forces you to develop inner strength. When you face rejection for being authentic, when you stand alone in your consciousness, when you maintain your truth despite pressure to conform, you develop an inner strength that nothing can shake. You learn to validate yourself. You learn to trust your own experience. You learn to stand firm in your knowing, even when no one else understands. And this strength becomes unshakable. Jung called this the development of the individual. It requires separation from the collective. It requires standing apart. It requires irritating the egos of those still asleep. Not because you want to irritate them, but because consciousness itself is irritating to unconsciousness. Light is irritating to those who prefer darkness. Truth is irritating to those who live by illusion. So here's what it comes down to. If you are spiritually awake, you will irritate the ego in others. This is not a bug in the system. This is a feature. This is how consciousness works in a largely unconscious world. You will lose friends. You will disappoint family members. You will be misunderstood by colleagues. You will be accused of things that aren't true. You will be rejected for being exactly who you are. And none of that means you're doing it wrong. It means you're doing it right. It means you're actually awake. It means you're living authentically in a world that values conformity. It means you're standing in consciousness in a collective that prefers sleep. Jung spent his entire life navigating this dynamic. He lost his mentor. He was rejected by his peers. He was misunderstood by his contemporaries. But he continued anyway, because he understood something essential. Consciousness is its own reward. You don't wake up to be popular. You don't do the inner work to gain approval. You don't become conscious to fit in better. You wake up because something in you demands it. Because authenticity is more important than acceptance. Because truth is more valuable than comfort. Because being real is worth more than being liked. And yes, it's hard. Yes, it's lonely sometimes. Yes, it hurts when people you love can't meet you in your consciousness. But it's also liberating. It's also empowering. It's also the most meaningful thing you can do with your life. So, if you're waking up and noticing that you're irritating people, take it as confirmation. You're on the right path. You're doing the work. You're becoming who you truly are. And the egos of others will react. Because that's what egos do when confronted with consciousness. But that's their journey. Your journey is to keep waking up, to keep being real, to keep standing in your truth. Let them be irritated. Let their egos react. Let them project and defend and distance themselves. None of it changes who you are or the validity of your awakening. You're conscious. And consciousness, once awakened, cannot be undone. Only deepened. Keep going. Keep being you. Keep shining your light. The world needs your consciousness, even when, especially when, it makes people uncomfortable.